Alia, thanks so much for joining me here on Sisterhood with Shaili. First question, why entrepreneurship?
Firstly, thank you for having me. Whenever anybody asks me why, I always say why not, because I am someone who believes in not limiting oneself to anything. Having said that, yes, it is sometimes alarming to people as to why I decided to start a kidswear clothing brand. Because I started this in 2020 when I didn't even have kids. But it happened very organically. I've always been somebody who has a bit of a, while I'm creative, I also like to be a creator. I haven't been able to, confidently say that one day I'm going to make a film. That is the highest form of creation, in my opinion. But I did want to start a brand. There was a lot of chatter about doing like a regular fashion wear brand for girls my age, for women, my age, fashion, that sort of space. But it just felt like it was a crowded market. There were too many fashion wear brands already. Why do another brand in that category? So we looked at identifying the gap in the market, and the understanding was that there was a genuine dearth of a homegrown Indian kids wear clothing brand.
Yeah.
You look deeper, there was a dearth for a kids wear homegrown Indian sustainable clothing brand. You look a little further, there's a dearth for an Indian homegrown kids wear sustainable, affordable clothing brand. So
Yeah.
there we hit the gap, and we put in the money. By we, I mean I put in the money, put together a team of ninjas that I call them because it was a really tiny team, but it was a very passionate team that believed in the vision. Um, and we were all set to launch April 2020, and then we were hit with the pandemic. So it's like how they say break a leg, we truly broke a leg because it was just something that we did not expect.
Yeah.
So we were sitting on the spring summer collection inventory for about, I think, 4 to 5 months. Finally, where we decided we can't hold on to the inventory anymore. And it's not something that we had planned out for in our brand strategy and our, for the
Yeah.
years to come. So we lost out on that quarter, but we decided to launch anyway, go live. We had an exclusive launch plan with First Cry for the first 6 months. So we launched our spring summer collection in autumn winter. And we didn't do any of that launch with me at the forefront of it. We just launched the brand plain, cold,
Yeah.
with the story of a sustainable clothing kids wear brand, and it hit. It sold out in a couple of weeks, and it just became extremely clear to us that as long as your positioning and your product is right, then there's no stopping.
What was the learning curve like? I love the sound of things that I myself am going through because this is my second startup and I'm thinking, oh, business plan, defining, targeting the market, all of that. So, at
Yeah.
what point did you have to up the learning curve on that front for yourself?
I think every day is a learning, right? Even though it's something that maybe I'm not physically sitting in the Edamama office uh working on the inventory on a day-to-day basis, but when it comes to the broad strokes and really making the big decisions, nothing can happen without me. And I've always been somebody who's very clear about the fact that I'm not a businesswoman. I understand, like I said, I have a certain inclination towards creation, but I've not studied business. I don't understand that. I ask my team very often to explain it to me in layman's terms. They talk to me like I'm a child and explain it to me. If I don't understand it, then nobody's going to understand it. But I
Yeah.
think at the end of the day, you just have to put your money where your mouth is, right? You have to believe in a particular vision. And in our opinion, we were filling a gap. So as long as your product is good, and if you're not just saying that we're a sustainable clothing brand, where we are a sustainable clothing brand, we are going through all those, standards, and that we're meeting through the checklist to make sure we're a sustainable clothing brand, right from our fabrics to our dyes to not using plastic, whether in our garments or in our packaging. Um, it's something that we've paid very close attention to, and I have to give it to my business head, Ifat, who's really made sure that the sourcing is bang on. We don't let any sort of loose ends flutter around here and there, and which is why we can keep our market prices really affordable as well.
Yeah.
For us, the challenges have also been maybe for the fact that there is a certain understanding that a sustainable clothing brand is not affordable. It's something that we've faced from the word go. So we need to keep sort of hitting that narrative a little bit stronger, that we are an affordable, we're a masstige brand. And I'm very clear about the fact I didn't want to make a premium kidswear clothing brand, because kidswear is something that kids are constantly growing out, especially with infants launching now. I think every couple of weeks it's like, okay, this doesn't fit anymore. What do I do about this? So even with our
Yes.
styles, we try and stick to unisex styles quite a bit, not just pink for girls and blue for boys, because just basic understanding of like, okay, I'm buying clothes for kid number one, but I may want to save it up for kid number two. So not making it too sort of set in stone, trying to keep it as fluid as possible, and try to hear from the consumer responses as much as possible.
Yeah. So let's dive a little more into the entrepreneur that you are. So why was it important for you to be an entrepreneur? And the reason I ask you is that people have different motivations, right? I mean, you could be something else, and not an entrepreneur. Was it, for example, you know, planning something that I will do when I decide to stop acting? But in today's world, I don't suppose anybody stops really, and needn't. So I'm just curious what went behind saying,
Yeah.
listen, what I'm going to be Alia, the entrepreneur as well.
I think it's a little bit of security, a little bit of safety, and a little bit of passion. When I say security and safety, I mean that I think I'm that kind of person that always wants to sort of, I don't want to be jack of all, master of none, but I want to be able to have um um my foot into different categories, into different forays, only because I feel like I have that inclination to learn more in each department. Maybe, I don't know. Like, I don't even know how I decided and why I decided to be a producer. It just felt like the natural sort of progression for me. Um, I will always be an actor first. That is my first love, and that is my priority. But I think for me, the ability that I fact that, okay, I made a certain amount of money and I can put that money into and invest. I can invest that money somewhere where I can actually start something of my own and see that brand grow. Curiosity, I don't know. There are various words that I can use. But I mentioned this before. I think I've always had a bit of an entrepreneur mindset. I'm always thinking about what I can do. It's really strange, but I remember a couple of months ago, just not a couple of months ago, a couple of years ago, when apps were suddenly coming out to be this like big thing and stuff like that, I was like constantly thinking of different app ideas. What, like, oh, I can have this kind of app and that kind of app. And so I have to say, I'm not going to name it and claim it, but some of the app ideas that I had actually went on to become very successful, business ventures. But at the end of the day, as I said, you have to put your money where your mouth is. So I bought one idea in my head, and I was like, and with the team, think this is the one idea that we should invest in. It was a risk. There's no saying that it could have maybe gone totally horribly, but it didn't. And yeah, just went
How
with it.
much of a risk taker are you in life?
I'm not a safe chick at all. In fact, sometimes I feel I'm extremely impulsive, and then I realize a couple of months later, saying, "Why did I get myself into that?" And now I have to deal with one more thing. So I am a I am a bit of a risk taker, but I'm not a risk taker for the heck of it. And I also don't believe to have all the answers. So for me, taking an informed risk with as much information that I can get is the first step to go, and then eventually you just have to go with it. You just have to go with your instinct.
Is that how also you look at your money? Because I love the way you pointed out. It's so important to have advisors. It's so important to do this. It's also important to take risk. When it comes to making investment decisions, how do you approach it?
Uh, the generic answer would be, oh, you invest in a vision that you would like to, but that is the truth. You have to invest in a story that you believe in. For example, tomorrow, if I'm just making an elevator pitch about edamama, I can't just talk about the different styles we have and this color clothing and that palette and the different categories. Okay, what is the soul? What is the story behind it? What is the
Yeah.
understanding? What is the gap that it's filling? And I'm sure you may resonate with that as well, since we were talking a little bit about the way you started your, entrepreneurial journey. You have to be able to take a little bit of a step back and really assess. And whenever I'm met with an investment opportunity, obviously I take some time to think about it. But it's like I can take one step back and I'll understand. I take a further step back. But if I keep going further and further away, I don't think I'll ever make that investment. So I have to reach that point where I have enough information, but not too much information to scare me away and then keep everything attached to my toilet seat. I mean, I have nothing attached to my toilet seat, but I mean, that is the understanding of not playing it extremely cautious, but finding that one vision that you feel will stand the test of time, if that's possible.
So, that said, so one of the things that women face, I mean, among the thousands of various stereotypes they do, is the stereotype of being able to make a business work, succeed at a business. And the flip side of it is that women are really punished for failing at it. So I'm just wondering, when you were thinking about these, these risks that you take in life, how do you look at the idea of success and failure as an individual?
I think success and failure is a part and parcel of any endeavor. Um, and honestly, I really don't. I'm not one to stand for raised eyebrows or like people sort of assessing whether you're doing well at it or not. And all, I really don't care. I kind of just let actions speak louder than words. If you're continuously sort of bothered by judgment and lens, it may kind of hamper your decision making, and you may land up actually making certain decisions. While it's very important to listen to consumer feedback, it's even more important uh, um, to sort of negate baseless criticism. So success and failure is something, in fact, that I feel you learn more from your failures than you learn from your success. Um, so take learnings from consumers, but not really pay attention to the other kind of chatter.
So, when you look at failure and you look at how you rewire your entire approach as an entrepreneur, as a person, as an individual, how do you deal with stereotypes that stereotype you down to a woman? Like as a mom. I mean, like that, you know.
I think it's
What's the worst
something.
you've heard? What's the worst you've heard?
uh See, this whole like I remember, I mean, for me, when I kind of even announced the fact that I was pregnant, there were not a lot of articles, there was a lot of love, there was a lot of support. And I feel like the younger generation really gets it. Like the younger generation really gets the fact that, oh, you're taking a bold decision, so to speak, at the peak of your career and all those words. They really get that all that doesn't matter. And as long as you have passion and you have a certain understanding of time management, things work out perfectly. But I feel like sometimes for clickbait, there's a lot of conversation around how everything's going to change and everything's going to stop and everything's going to close down. And I find that very off-putting. And I constantly try to respond with kindness and love, because of course I can be extremely defensive and aggressive about it. But I also, like I said, prefer to just speak from actions rather than words. I'm fortunate enough to, even like at this extremely important phase in my life, of as a mother, have the help to be able to take time out and go to work and still continue to be a passionate actor whilst being a passionate mom. So I'm fortunate for that, for that help and those resources in my life. But I also feel like narratives of women's lives completely changing when they focus on their personal life as well, and you can only do one thing at a time, I think is extremely archaic. And the only way to shut it down is to just keep working, keep your head up, keep your head down and keep your head up, and just keep going. Come January 25th, I was back to work after having a baby on 6th of November. And I've taken enough time for myself, and I will continue to prioritize my child's life. But that doesn't mean that I will just let my work slip, because that's a very important part, very integral part of my personality.